Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. It's our literature unit.
Woohoo!
We're going to be talking about a book. It's a very famous book, actually. It's called The Catcher in the Rye.
And the author, just in case you wanted to know, is J.D. Salinger. And this is basically the only novel that he wrote. I think he wrote some other stuff, but this is what he's most famous for. This particular novel is kind of depressing, but it might be something that some of you may relate to because it's all about a young child kind of coming of age, a young man going to college and getting kind of disillusioned with the world and fighting depression and various pressures and things like that. So yeah, there might be some things in this book that you could relate to. I should mention that I did read this novel back in college many years ago, and parts of it I could relate to, how he describes some people as being phony. I certainly have known lots of phony people in my life as well, but this guy was pretty much depressed here, and it bothered him quite a bit, so that's what this story is all about. So yeah, as we usually do for our literature unit, we will summarize the plot in the first 2 days and talk about the author in the third day. So let's get to it. Let's start talking about The Catcher in the Rye. Let's read through today's lesson now one time. Holden Caulfield, a 17-year-old boy, tells us all about what happened when he flunked out of Pensy Prep. In doing so, he guides us through the early stages of the breakdown that resulted in his being committed to a mental hospital. Pensy Prep is an exclusive academic institution, but Holden isn't impressed with it. He considers the people there to be phonies, a term he applies to almost everyone. Holden describes his dislike for his peers, including Ackley, his annoying neighbor, and Stradlater, his muscular and good-looking roommate. Stradlater tells Holden he has a date with Jane Gallagher, a girl Holden has feelings for. Stradlater then coerces Holden into writing a composition for him in English, the one subject Holden isn't failing. Holden writes about his younger brother Ali, who is dead. However, this isn't what Stradlater needs, and he complains. He also refuses to tell Holden about his date with Jane. Holden insults Stradlater, who punches him in the face. Consequently, Holden decides to leave Pensy Prep at once and head to New York, where he plans to have a wild time before returning home to face his parents. In New York, Holden visits the hotel bar. He meets some girls but becomes frustrated by what he interprets as their superficial nature. Later, he purchases alcohol at another bar. There, he's annoyed by everything he finds. Holden returns to his hotel, where the elevator operator offers him a sex worker. Holden accepts, but changes his mind after she starts taking off her clothes. She departs only to return with the elevator operator, who punches him in the gut, while the sex worker takes more money from Holden's wallet.
Okay, guys, let's get started. Actually, this is a 3-day literature unit. This is what we call a classic in American literature. So this book's been around quite a while, as we're going to find out. But usually when we have classics, like there's certain models of cars that are classic, or we even have fashions that are considered to be classic and never go out of style. Well, when we have that kind of book, we usually give it 3 days. So let's get started. The day one routine on our literature unit, of course, is to talk about the plot, the story, what happens in the book. And that's what we're doing here. So we've got our protagonist. That's the lead character, the main character in the book. We're going to follow him. His name's Holden. Holden is still a name I hear every once in a while in America, but it was very popular for parents at the turn of the century, the 19th century, to name their boys Holden. There's a very famous actor, William Holden, and actually that was his last name. My mom had a crush on him, so I remember that actor. This kid's name is Holden Caulfield. He's 17 years old. Now, in America, that usually puts you as a senior in high school. a senior in high school. So he's telling us about what happened when he flunked out of a very expensive, exclusive school. He's from the East Coast, and they have a lot of what we call prep schools, and you have to have quite a bit of money to attend them. So you'll find that like rich kids from rich families who want their kids to go to really famous colleges, especially the Ivy League schools like Yale and Harvard, Brown. They want their kids to get into those colleges, and usually you need to have gone to a prep school first. And this was his prep school, Pensy Prep. So he flunked out. He did something bad, got such bad grades, they kicked him out, and that's what it means to flunk out of school or flunk out of a grade. You get kicked out because you just don't do well enough.
Exactly. So prep here is short for preparatory high school, I suppose, a high school that's preparing you for university, as Stephanie said, more specifically in an Ivy League school, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, etc., etc. And so he's going to Pensy Prep. If you've seen the movie Dead Poets Society, that's all about a bunch of boys at a prep school.
Yeah.
They're all getting groomed to go to Ivy League schools and become doctors, lawyers, and engineers and leaders of society. So in this particular case, though, the guy's a failure. He flunked out of Pensy Prep, and in doing so, he guides us through the early stages of the breakdown that resulted in his being committed to a mental hospital. So here we've got breakdown. There are lots of different kinds of breakdowns that occur in the world. There's an old song by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers called Breakdown. Breakdown, go ahead and give it to me. Maybe you've heard that song before. But in any case here, breakdown as a noun just refers to when something just kind of breaks down, it falls apart, it fails. Like your car might break down, although that would be two words there as the verb phrase, to break down. The noun is breakdown. My car had a breakdown on the freeway this morning, so I had to hitchhike to work.
Yeah, past tense, it broke down on the highway. But if you have a mental breakdown, it means you just have been overwhelmed with stress, you're too upset, you just can't deal with life. And sometimes, if the mental breakdown is very severe, and here it would be one word, mental breakdown, sometimes you have to go and recover in some sort of hospital, usually a mental institution. Maybe you check yourself into the mental institution. Maybe somebody else checks you in because you've really lost it. So sometimes the police will arrest you if you're doing crazy stuff, and sometimes you really do get sent to be in that institution for a while.
Exactly. So this, of course, is describing his breakdown, and he was eventually committed to a mental hospital, to a mental institution. Hopefully, he recovered later and became an outstanding member of society. Now, let's talk about Pensy Prep. I don't think this preparatory high school actually exists, but there are lots of them that do exist. Pensy Prep is an exclusive academic institution, but Holden isn't impressed with it. So it's exclusive. That means only special people get in there, people with good grades or with parents with a lot of money and connections. So, of course, it's exclusive, and they're all going to wear uniforms and expect to behave a certain way. But he's not impressed with this place. He considers the people there to be phonies, a term he applies to almost everyone. Phony is a word that's kind of old. Maybe it's not used as often as it used to be.
Yeah, my dad loves this word.
Yeah, phony just means somebody who's pretentious. They don't really know what they're doing. They think they know everything, but they really don't. They're just 假的, as you say in Chinese. They're pretentious.
Yeah, or they fake it. My dad also uses that phrase. It's phony bologna. Bologna's a type of lunch meat that we eat on sandwiches. But phony bologna, yeah. He's a phony. She's a phony. Someone who's just not sincere. So they pretend to be smarter than they are, cooler than they are. You know, any sort of way you could be 假的 or fake Fake or phony, you could say, oh, he's such a fake. Or sometimes people say he's such a faker. There are lots of these kind of words we have for people we don't really like. So he applies it to almost everyone. And to be honest, a guy in high school who's unhappy with life probably thinks everyone's a phony, except himself, of course. Well, he describes his dislike for his peers. Your peers are people who are your age. You probably go to school at the same time. Your peers at work would be the people that were on a similar level as you are. Your peer wouldn't be, if you're just a worker who goes in and works and then leaves at 5, your peer wouldn't be your supervisor or the CEO. No. They're on different levels than you are. So he names some of these people he can't stand. He hates Ackley because he's annoying and he lives next door, or his neighbor. Neighbor could be across the street, next door, on the same street, just, pretty close. He also, and Stradlater, who has the weird name, he hates him because he's got too many muscles. He probably looks good, and the girls probably like him. He's also good looking, which, of course, makes Holden hate him even more.
Right, he's kind of a macho man, so Holden doesn't like him either. He's muscular and he's handsome, and lots of girls want to get to know him. And so we've introduced Holden, and we've introduced a couple of the people that live in his dormitory, and we'll continue talking some more about the plot of The Catcher in the Rye in just a second. But right now we're going to take a break and listen to our Chinese teacher.
大家好，我是派老师。今天讲解的是7月份 Unit 11 The Catcher in the Rye Holden Caulfield's Troubled Times 这个单元有3天的课文介绍，第2次世界大战后出版的小说 The Catcher in the Rye 麦田捕手。好，我们一起来看课文当中的关键句型、文法与重点单字片语。首先，第一段第一句 Holden tells us what happened when he flunked out of Pansy Prep. 请同学把 flunked out of 画起来。这里所指的就是被退学。那我们知道被退学其实还有另外一种讲法，就是 was expelled. He was expelled from school. E-X-P-E-L-L-E-D. He was expelled from school. 第二句 He guides us through the early stages of the breakdown that resulted in his being committed to a mental hospital. 这一句请注意几个地方。首先 breakdown 那指的可能是 nervous breakdown 就是精神崩溃， result in 是导致的意思， being committed to a mental hospital 则是被送入精神病院。第二段第一句 Pansy Prep is an exclusive academic institution. Pansy Prep 是学校，什么样的学校呢？ Exclusive 这里指的呢是相当高级的、高贵的、高端的。那我们举个例句来说好了。An exclusive upscale neighborhood. An exclusive upscale neighborhood 就是一个什么样的社区？尊荣高级的社区。好，那接着请同学看到第二句 He considers the people there to be phonies. 他认为这所学校的人都很虚假。请同学把 consider to be 画起来。他认为那边的人都相当的虚假。认定什么人怎么样，那我们就可以用这一个句型Considers the people there to be. 好，请特别把 consider 还有 to be 画起来。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Well, Welcome back, everybody. Now, let's continue talking about Holden Caulfield. He's 17 years old, and he's going to Pensy Prep. We find out that he flunks out later, but while he was there, he had a roommate whose name was Stradlater, who was muscular and good-looking, and then he had a neighbor, Ackley, whom he disliked. He hated him. And he thought he was annoying. But let's talk more about Stradlater, his roommate here. Stradlater, the muscular and good-looking guy, tells Holden he has a date with Jane Gallagher, a girl Holden has feelings for. So these guys, hey, they like the same girl. They both have a crush on sweet Jane there, Jane Gallagher. But hey, this Stradlater is muscular, he's good-looking, and he's got a date with her. Holden has feelings for her too, but hey, Holden's kind of this quiet, depressed sort of guy. And if I were Jane, I think I'd rather go out with the macho man.
Probably. And you know what? I have to be honest. Guys who are really, kind of negative and they hate everybody aren't very attractive to most girls.
Sure.
Unless there's another girl like him who has a bad attitude, hates everybody. Maybe they might, get together. I don't know. But I wouldn't want to go out with him. So, yeah, he wants a date, or Stradlater has a date with Jane. And, of course, poor Holden, he likes her. Jane probably is never going to give him the time of day. Give someone the time of day just means give him attention. Oh, so he then coerces or maybe kind of manipulates or forces Holden into writing a composition for him in English. Composition here is a paper that we have to write, at least in America, about some theme or topic. Your teacher would tell you how many words you need to write. But if it's a composition, it's not a research paper. This is all you. You have to produce everything that you write in this paper. And we find out that Holden might be negative and hate everybody, but he is a good writer.
Right, and maybe Stradlater is just a big, dumb jock or something like that.
Yeah.
And so, gee, I can't write this paper. You better do it for me, Holden, or I'm going to break your jaw. So, yeah, he coerces him. He kind of forces him to write a composition for him in English. And this is one subject that Holden isn't failing. It's one subject that he's actually good at. Holden writes about his younger brother, Allie, who is dead. That's the subject of the composition. However, this isn't what Stradlater needs, and he complains. I did not want you to write some story about your dumb, dead brother. That's not going to help me with this assignment. So, Stradlater is upset by that, and he complains. He also refuses to tell Holden about his date with Jane. So maybe Holden was asking him, hey, how was your date with Jane Gallagher? How did it go? What did you guys do? Did you go see a movie? Did you get to, go park somewhere and do some necking or something like that?
Yeah, kissing, yeah.
Something like that. And in this particular case, I guess he says, that's none of your business. And Holden insults Stradlater, who punches him in the face. So because Stradlater did not tell Holden about the date, so Holden was angry and he insulted Stradlater. If you insult someone, you call them names.
Why would she go out with some dummy like you?
Yeah, she probably didn't have a good time with a big dumb jock like you.
Yeah.
You probably don't even know who Shakespeare is.
Right.
And of course, Stradlater did not like that insult, so he punched him in the face.
Ow.
And consequently, as a result of that, Holden decides to leave Pensy Prep at once. And he's going to head to New York, where he plans to have a wild time before returning home to face his parents. So I guess he had this conflict with his roommates, and so as a result of that, consequently, or as a result of something, he decided to leave Pensy Prep and head to New York City.
Yeah, consequently is used when we're talking about the results of some sort of action or series of actions. The consequence of Holden insulting Stradlater was that Stradlater punched him in the face, and that's when Holden decides to go. He heads to New York. He's very close to New York City. And he plans to have a wild time before returning home to face his parents. That happened quite a bit. it still does happen. Kids want to get away from home. Maybe they live in New Jersey or Connecticut. It's pretty fast to get into Manhattan from there. And so they go and take a train, get into the city, just to get in trouble. So what does Holden do? What does he do? Well, he's in New York, and he visits a hotel bar. Remember, he's 17. It's illegal to drink alcohol until you're 21 in the U.S. So he meets some girls. Woohoo! But he then becomes frustrated by what he interprets or sees as their superficial nature. Meaning, once again, he thinks they're phonies, right? So if you're frustrated, you feel annoyed, maybe you're upset because you're not able to do what you want to do. Or maybe you can't get someone to change their mind about something. Or life just isn't turning out the way you want it to. You get frustrated. Tom, go ahead and talk about what interprets mean. Interprets means as a vocabulary word, but also superficial.
Yeah, well, the verb interpret just means how you understand something and, of course, how you explain the meaning of something if you're trying to explain it to somebody else. So he talks to these girls and he hears them talking about things and they giggle and stuff like that. So he interprets this as them being superficial. And superficial just means on the surface only. They're only concerned about what they look like. They probably haven't really read very much in their lives. They've never traveled anywhere. They don't know a lot. They just know how to be pretty and how to laugh at dumb things and stuff like that. So I think most of us have met superficial people from time to time. Sometimes, the surface is enough. What you look like gets you pretty far in life.
Oh, stop that. Superficial is also, it can be exchanged for shallow. Someone who's not very deep or thoughtful will often call them superficial or shallow. Oh, he's so shallow. He never thinks about life. It's all about how he can make some money. So, yeah, he was a little disappointed. So later, he buys or purchases alcohol at another bar. We call this bar hopping in America. If you go from one bar to another. So he purchases. Purchase is simply another way to say buy. And you can use it interchangeably. I don't consider purchase to be, more gaudy or anything. So purchase, buy. And he, again, goes to another bar.
Yeah, maybe he was unable to buy alcohol at the one bar.
Maybe they carded him, meaning they asked for his ID.
He is only 17, and New York's drinking age at the time may have been 21 or something like that. Sometimes they ask for your ID, sometimes they don't. So he went to another bar and was able to purchase alcohol there, which could be beer, whiskey, vodka, whatever. And there he's annoyed by everything he finds. So, yeah, I guess this is kind of what we call a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you look for the worst, then that's what you're going to find.
Yeah.
So, yes, he is annoyed by everything there. He returns to his hotel where the elevator operator offers him a sex worker. Hey, I've got this prostitute for you. Are you interested? He accepts, but then he changes his mind after she starts taking off her clothes. He loses interest and she departs. She leaves only to return with the elevator operator who punches him in the gut, which would be in your stomach. Ugh. And then the sex worker takes more money from Holden's wallet. I guess they were expecting more money from this particular business transaction.
Oh, it sounds like they have a scheme going on. So the elevator operator probably recommends her as a prostitute. And then when they didn't get to, get the money from her work as a sex worker, then they just stole it from him. So that's what happens when you go to really seedy or gross or bad hotels. S-E-E-D-Y, seedy just means really gross, dirty. There's a lot of crime going on there. Don't go to those hotels.
Could have been 42nd Street at one time in the past.
Oh, yeah.
Although I understand they've cleaned it up quite well.
They've cleaned it up, but it's getting bad again.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Let's listen now to our Chinese teacher.
接下来第五句 Stradlater then coerces Holden into writing a composition for him. 那这里呢，请同学把 coerces 还有 into 画起来，就是 Stradlater 他接着胁迫 Holden 为他写一篇英文作文，所以 coerce 什么人 into 后面加 VING 就胁迫什么人做什么事。接着我们看到 Holden writes about his younger brother Ali 这一句。那 Holden 呢，他所写的作文其实是关于自己的弟弟 Ali， 但是他的弟弟已经过世了。However, this isn't what Stradlater needs. 这不是 Stradlater 他想要的内容。那他的同学呢，就在那里抱怨。He also refuses to tell Holden about his date with Jane. 那而且呢，他也不愿意告诉 Holden 到底他跟 Jane， 这个 Jane 其实就是 Holden 所喜欢的女孩子，他们的约会情况到底是怎么样。Holden insults Stradlater, who punches him in the face. 这里的 who 指的呢就是 Stradlater， 胁迫 Holden 帮他写作业的人。那他朝 Holden 的脸上挥了一拳。Consequently, Holden decides to leave Pansy Prep at once. 请同学把 at once 画起来，马上，他就决定要马上呢离开这所贵族学校 Pansy Prep。去哪呢？ Head to New York. 他想去纽约。那请同学注意，纽约后面呢这个逗点一定要保留，因为这里我们要用的是非限定修饰 where， 就是在纽约。He plans to have a wild time before returning home to face his parents. 他希望在回家面对自己父母亲之前，能够好好的狂欢一场。第三段交代了 Holden 到纽约之后的经历。In New York, Holden visits the hotel bar. He meets some girls, but becomes frustrated by what he interprets as their superficial nature. What he interprets as 那 their 所指的就是 those girls' superficial nature。这句话的意思是指他所解读的女生肤浅的生性。Interpret 其实呢就是解读的意思。好，接下来呢，我们请看到下一个句子，在 She departs only to return with the elevator operator。这里的 only to 请同学画起来，那是什么意思呢？ Only to 我们可以解释成没有料到，没想到却怎么样。老师给大家一个例句 I tried so hard to get this job, only to find that it is even worse than my last one. 我很努力才得到这份工作，结果却发现这份工作呢，比我之前的工作还要更糟。好的，以上呢就是我们针对 Unit 11第一天的讲解，谢谢大家。
That's it for today, but please join us again next time when we continue to summarize our featured work of literature for the month of July, The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Make sure you join us then. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.